The grand interspecies gala was a symphony of light and sound that Lee Yuna felt more than heard. It vibrated through the polished floor and up the titanium struts of her mobility exoskeleton, a faint hum against her calves and thighs. She moved through the crowd in Neosol's Orion Hall with practiced, quiet precision. The exoskeleton was a masterpiece of human engineering, sleek, silent, and responsive to her neural commands. But to everyone else, it was just a cage made visible. A sign that read, "Broken." She guided herself to a less crowded spot near a vast window overlooking the city's neon rivers. Her eyes, sharp and dark, scanned the room. They were all here. The gelatinous diplomats from the Jlun collective shimmered in their climate bubbles. The insectoid Vri clicked their mandibles in polite conversation. And there, near the center, was the most imposing group of all. The Diarachon, her breath hitched, just for a second. Ambassador Kong Daehoon stood a full head taller than the humans around him. His scales, a deep emerald green, caught the light like polished stone. He moved with a slow, powerful grace. A simple look from his amber, slitted eyes made people step back. The Diarachon were warriors, a species built for strength and honor. Their culture respected power above all. Physical weakness was a foreign, uncomfortable concept to them. A young Diarachon aide, his scales a lighter bronze, stood near Yuna. He was talking to a human diplomat Yuna recognized as Park Jisoo. The aide's voice, a low hiss, carried. "The accommodations are sufficient," the Diarachon said, his tone bored. "Though the lifts are slow, one must admire human persistence. They build so much even with their limitations." He didn't look at Yuna. He didn't have to. The word limitations hung in the air, heavy and pointed. Park Jisoo offered a tight, diplomatic smile, choosing to ignore the slight. Yuna's fingers tightened on the control pad of her exoskeleton. A heat that had nothing to do with the room's temperature bloomed in her chest. It was an old, familiar fire. She called it her dragon's heart, a secret name for a secret truth. She looked away, turning her gaze back to the stars beyond the window. The memory was always there, just beneath the surface. The screaming alarms, the smell of burning wires and ozone, the feeling of her fighter ship, the Sirocco, moving like it was part of her own body. Then the crushing silence and the cold after the escape pod. "You're doing that thing," a warm voice said beside her, "where you look calm, but you're planning how to redesign a star cruiser with your mind." Kim Taeyong appeared at her side, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. He handed one to her. His face was friendly and open, his smile easy. He was her oldest friend. He was also the only other person alive who knew everything. "Just admiring the view, Taeyong," Yuna said, taking the glass. Her voice was steady, a lifetime of control. "Sure. And that young lizard's comment didn't bother you at all," he said, his voice dropping. He had heard it. "It's nothing new," she shrugged. "Fragile human, slow human, it's all the same." Taeyong's smile faded. "They don't know. They have no idea what one fragile human can do. And they never will," Yuna said, her tone final. "That was the agreement. After the Kessel 7 incident, the military buried the data. The hero was a nameless, presumed dead pilot. It was cleaner that way. The real pilot, the one who had flown the impossible patterns, who had held the line, was given a medal, a pension, and this exoskeleton. They expected her to fade away quietly. Sometimes, she thought she had." Her eyes drifted back to Ambassador Daehoon. He was listening to a Vri diplomat, but his gaze was wandering the room. For a fleeting moment, it passed over her. It wasn't a look of pity or dismissal. It was a look of assessment, a hunter's look. It stopped on her for a second longer than was polite before moving on. A strange chill went down Yuna's spine. It felt like being seen, not looked at. "He's impressive, isn't he?" Taeyong murmured, following her gaze. "Read his brief. He fought in the border wars, single-handedly brokered the peace on Kirtel. They say he remembers every debt, honorable or otherwise. A true Diarachon," Yuna said softly. "Honor was their currency." And in their view, her sacrifice at Kessel 7, if they knew of it, would be a mountain of honor, not a disability pension. The music shifted. The crowd began to move toward the dining hall. Yuna prepared to follow the flow. As she turned, she found her path gently blocked. Park Jisoo stood there, her diplomatic smile perfectly in place. Lee Yuna, I'm glad you could come. Your work in xenobiology is so important for these events, Jisoo said. Her words were correct, but her eyes were on the exoskeleton's joints, not Yuna's face. Thank you, Diplomat Park. It's a fascinating gathering, Yuna replied. Indeed, just perhaps stay near the back during the speeches. We want the visuals to be cohesive. The DRA-Con are particularly sensitive to perceptions of strength. Jisoo said it kindly as if offering helpful advice. The meaning was clear. Don't remind them we can be broken. Before Yuna could form a response, a deep, resonant voice spoke behind Jisoo. Perceptions are often clouds that hide the sun. Ambassador Kang Dae-hoon had approached without a sound. Jisoo jumped slightly. Yuna felt her heart pound once, hard, against her ribs. Ambassador, I was just speaking with our esteemed Dr. Lee, Jisoo said, recovering quickly. Dae-hoon inclined his head to Jisoo, but his eyes were fixed on Yuna. Up close, they were like molten gold. Doctor, your name was on the guest list. Your paper on adaptive silicon-based biology was illuminating. Yuna was stunned. He had read her work. Thank you, Ambassador. The Jlun life cycle is a study in extreme resilience. Resilience, he repeated the word, tasting it. A powerful quality. It is the foundation of true strength. His gaze flickered, just for an instant, to her exoskeleton. Not with disgust, but with a deep, unnerving curiosity. It reminds me of a story, a battle tale from several cycles ago. The Kessel 7 incident. Are you familiar with it, Doctor? The air left Yuna's lungs. The sounds of the gala faded into a distant roar. She could feel Taeyong, a few feet away, go perfectly still. She forced her face into a mask of mild academic interest. A famous last stand. A training ship against pirate raiders. It's taught in basic tactics. Yes, Dae-hoon said, his voice a low rumble. But the tactics, they were not basic. The flight data that was leaked, the maneuver patterns, they were unique, almost beautiful. They reminded my people of our old sky dances. The pilot was never identified. A great shame. Such honor should be celebrated, not hidden. He was looking at her as if he was trying to solve a complex equation. Yuna's world narrowed to those golden eyes. He knew. He didn't have proof, but he knew. The dragon had seen the shadow of the dragon inside her. Perhaps the pilot, Yuna said, her voice miraculously steady, prefers the silence. A slow, subtle ripple passed over the scales near Dae-hoon's jaw. A DRA-Con expression. Intrigue. Silence can be a prison, Doctor. Or it can be the calm before the storm. He gave another slight nod, this one deeper, more respectful, and moved away with Jisoo scrambling to follow. Yuna was left alone, the ghost of his words echoing in her ears. She looked down at her hands, resting on the controls of the machine that held her up. For the first time in years, the metal felt less like a cage and more like dormant wings. The dinner was a blur of flavorless food and polite noise for Yuna. She sat at a table with other mid-level scientists and junior diplomats. Their conversation was about funding and politics. Yuna nodded in the right places, but her mind was far away. It was back in the cockpit of the Sirocco, feeling the ship scream through the void. Every few minutes, she could feel a gaze on her. It was a heavy, warm pressure on the side of her face. She did not need to look to know it was Ambassador Dae-hoon. He sat at the high table, a place of honor. He spoke with the important people, but his attention, like a searchlight, kept finding her in the crowd. Kim Taeyong sat beside her, a constant, worried presence. He leaned close, pretending to discuss the wine. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I think I am the ghost, Yuna whispered back. And he's the only one who can see me. When the formal dinner ended, the guests moved to a larger hall for drinks and music. Yuna needed air. She guided her exoskeleton through a side archway that led to a long, quiet balcony. The night air of Neosol was cool and carried the faint smell of rain. Below, the city lights swam like schools of bright fish. Above, the stars were hidden by the glow. She was alone. For the first time all night, her shoulders relaxed. She placed her hands on the railing, feeling the cold metal. She closed her eyes and just breathed. The soft sound of the balcony door opening and closing made her tense. The slow, deliberate footsteps were not human. They had a weight, a solidness to them. She did not turn. "The noise of celebration is tiring," Ambassador Daehoon said. His voice was quieter now, less formal. It was just a statement. "Yes," Yuna agreed, still looking at the city. "I prefer the silence." "You said that before," he noted. He came to stand beside her at the railing, keeping a respectful distance. He was so much larger up close. She could see the fine patterns on his scales, the way they shifted with his breathing. "But I do not think you mean it. Silence is not the same as peace." Now she looked at him. His profile was sharp against the city lights. "What do you think it is, then?" "A choice," he said, turning his head to meet her eyes. "Sometimes a brave one, sometimes a fearful one." They stood in silence for a moment. The distant music was a faint pulse. "The pilot at Kessel 7, Daehoon began, his voice thoughtful. "The data was incomplete, but what was there? It showed a mind of great clarity and great pain. The ship was badly damaged early in the fight. Life support was failing. Neural feedback from the damage would have been severe." Yuna's heart was a drum in her chest. She said nothing. "My people are pilots," he continued. "We feel the ship. It is a part of us. To take that much damage, to feel your ship die around you, it leaves a mark. On the mind, on the body." His eyes drifted down, then back to her face. It was not a rude look. It was a doctor looking at a symptom. Such an injury could sever the connection between will and movement, could leave a warrior trapped. Honored, but trapped. The words hung between them. They were not an accusation. They were a theory, spoken with a strange kindness. "That is an interesting story, Ambassador," Yuna said, her voice tight. "But it is just a story. The pilot died. That is the official record." "Records are paper," Daehoon said. "Honor is written in the bone. I have fought for many cycles. I have seen courage. I have also seen the shadows it leaves behind." He paused, choosing his next words with care. "On my world, we have a saying. A dragon does not hide its fire to keep others warm. It only banks its coals." "I am not a dragon," Yuna said softly. "Are you not?" he asked. There was no mockery in his tone, only a deep, genuine curiosity. The maneuvers, the rolling dive to draw fire from the civilian transports, the twist and burn that took out the pirate corvette's engine. Only a being with a dragon's heart would think to fly such a path. It was not a military tactic. It was an art, a terrible, beautiful art. Tears pricked at the corners of Yuna's eyes. She had not cried in years. She had locked all that away. No one had ever described it like that. To her superiors, it was a successful delaying action. To the doctors, it was the causative trauma. To this alien, it was art. It was a dragon's heart. She could not speak. She just looked at him, her mask finally, completely gone. Daehoon saw it. He saw the raw pain and the pride. He slowly bowed his head, a deep, formal gesture from a Diarachon warrior to an equal. "The debt is mine," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My aide spoke from ignorance today. My entire species has been ignorant. We honor strength, yet we failed to recognize its greatest form. Not the strength that breaks others, but the strength that breaks itself to save them." He straightened. "You are that pilot." It was not a question anymore. Yuna, exhausted and laid bare, gave one single small nod. The air seemed to change. The admission was a key turning in a lock. Daehoon's demeanor shifted from curiosity to a firm, solemn resolve. This, he gestured to her exoskeleton, is a cage built by those who do not understand. They gave you a medal and then told you to disappear. They saw the broken ship, not the unbroken pilot. It's not so simple, Yuna said, finding her voice again. The damage is permanent. The neural pathways are gone. For humans, perhaps, Daehoon said. A new light was in his eyes. It was fierce and determined. My people are hard to break, and we have learned, over time, how to mend what is torn. Our medicine is different. Yuna stared at him, not understanding. We have a treatment, he said, lowering his voice even further. A regenerative serum. It is for us. It helps our own nerves heal after great injury. It is not for other species. Sharing it is forbidden. It is a closely guarded secret. Hope, a dangerous and forgotten feeling, flickered in Yuna's chest. She immediately tried to crush it. Then why are you telling me? Because a debt must be paid, he said. Your fire was banked to save others. The least I can do is offer you a spark. He looked around, ensuring they were truly alone. I can give it to you. 1 dose. It is a risk. It may not work on human biology. Could be dangerous. And if anyone discovers I gave it to you, the consequences will be severe for us both. The world seemed to tilt. The city lights below swam in her vision. He was offering her the impossible. Not just a chance to walk, but a chance to be whole again. To be the pilot, not the patient. Why? Was all she could ask. Why would you risk so much? Daehoon looked out at the sprawling city, at his own reflection in the glass. Because tonight, for the first time in many cycles, I saw a dragon. And it is wrong for a dragon to be in a cage. He turned back to her. The choice is yours, but you must choose quickly. My time here is short. He gave her one last, long look, then turned and walked back inside, leaving her alone with the cold rail, the city lights, and the terrifying, dazzling possibility of fire. The rest of the gala passed for Yuna in a numb haze. Smiles and nods became automatic movements. The bright lights and chatter felt like they were behind a thick wall of glass. Inside, her mind was a storm. One word echoed again and again. Serum. She found Kim Taeyong by the main exit, looking anxious. His worry turned to panic when he saw her face. Yuna? What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Again. We need to leave, she said, her voice flat. Now. He didn't argue. He followed her as she moved smoothly through the crowd, her exoskeleton a quiet whisper against the floor. They didn't speak in the automated cab. Taeyong just watched her, seeing the conflict in her eyes. He knew her better than anyone. He had been there. They arrived at her apartment, a small, neat space with a good view of a quieter part of the city. Only when the door closed and locked did she let out a shaking breath. He knows, Taeyong, she said, leaning against the wall. The ambassador knows what? Everything. He figured it out. About Kessel 7. About me. Taeyong's face went pale. How? The records are sealed. They're buried. He saw the flight data, the old leaks. He said the maneuvers were like a Dracon skydance. She gave a short, humorless laugh. He called it art. Taeyong ran a hand through his hair. Okay, that's bad, but maybe not. He's a diplomat. What does he want? Yuna pushed herself away from the wall and moved to the window. She looked out, not seeing the lights. He wants to pay a debt of honor. She turned to face her friend. He offered me something, a Dracon medical treatment, a regenerative serum, for my nerves. For a moment, Taeyong just stared. Then he blinked. A cure. Maybe. It's not for humans. It's forbidden for them to share it. He said it's dangerous. It might not work. It might do something else. She wrapped her arms around herself. If we get caught, his career is over. Mine too. Probably worse. Taeyong sat down heavily on her sofa. He was quiet for a long time. Do you trust him? I don't know him, Yuna answered. But he didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. like I was a warrior who had fallen, not a broken thing. He's right about that, Taeyong said fiercely. You are. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Yuna, think. For 5 years you've lived in this box. They gave you a medal and a machine and told you to be quiet. I've watched the light in you get dimmer. This is a chance. A real one. It's a huge risk, she whispered. What do you have to lose? He asked, his voice gentle. Really? This apartment? Your job in the lab where they talk down to you? This? He pointed at the exoskeleton. You risked everything once to save 100 strangers. Can't you risk a little for yourself now? His words struck a deep chord. What did she have to lose? A life of quiet frustration. A lifetime of people like Park Ji-soo telling her to stay in the back. A lifetime of being the disabled woman first and Yuna second. He said, I have to choose quickly, Yuna said. Then choose, Taeyong said. I can't make this decision for you, but I'll tell you this. If you do it, I'll be there. Whatever you need. She thought about the feeling of flying. Not the memory of pain at the end, but the pure joy of it. The feeling of the ship being an extension of her own body. She thought about the cold, precise connection of her mind to the exoskeleton. It was a tool, but it was not her. She thought of Ambassador Daehoon's eyes, the deep, solemn honor in them. He was risking everything, too. Not for politics, but for a principle. Because he believed it was wrong. Okay, she said. The word was soft, but it felt solid. Okay, I'll do it. Taeyong nodded, a mix of fear and excitement on his face. What's the next step? I need to contact him. Securely. She moved to her desk console, her fingers flying over the keys with a speed her legs could never match. She used an old, layered protocol from her pilot days, something not easily traced. She sent a simple message to the code Daehoon had discreetly given her. The dragon remembers the sky. I choose the spark. The reply came less than a minute later. It was an address in the port district, not a hotel, but a private medical suite used by off-world diplomats. And a time? 0400, the deepest, quietest part of the night. Taeyong read it over her shoulder. Port district, for in the morning. Feels like a spy movie. It feels like treason, according to about 6 different interstellar laws. Yuna said, but a strange energy was buzzing in her veins. It was the feeling before a mission, the calm focus. The hours dragged. They couldn't sleep. Taeyong made tea, and they sat in the quiet dark. They didn't talk much. There was too much to say. At 0300, they left. Yuna wore dark, simple clothes. Taeyong carried a bag with basic medical supplies from his engineering kit, just in case. The streets were nearly empty. The port district was a maze of warehouses and anonymous buildings. The address led them to a small, clean facility with no signs. The door slid open as they approached. Inside, the light was low. Ambassador Daehoon stood in the middle of a sterile white room. He was out of his formal robes, wearing simpler Dracon attire. He looked larger, more real here. A small case sat on a medical table beside him. He looked at Taeyong, then back at Yuna. Your wingman. My friend, Yuna said. He stays. Daehoon gave a single nod of acceptance. He gestured to the table. The serum is in here. I must explain. This is not a simple repair. It does not just fix your human nerves. He opened the case. Inside, on a soft lining, was a single injector cartridge filled with a liquid that seemed to shimmer, deep blue with specks of silver. It encourages growth, new pathways. It is aggressive. It will use what is there, your nerves, the cybernetic links in your machine, and it will try to build a bridge. A new system, part you, part machine. It will be painful. The outcome is unknown. Yuna looked at the shimmering liquid. It looked alive. It looked dangerous. It looked like hope. What do I do? She asked. You must want it, Daehoon said, his golden eyes holding hers. Not just to walk. You must want to fly again. The serum responds to will, to the dragon's heart. Without that, it will do nothing or worse. Yuna didn't hesitate. She looked at the serum, then at Taeyong's worried face. then back at Daehoon. "I remember the sky," she said firmly. "Let's begin." The medical suite was cold and quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of the lights. Yuna sat on the edge of the exam table, the smooth surface cool through her clothes. She looked at the injector in Ambassador Daehoon's large, scaled hand. The shimmering liquid inside seemed to move on its own. Kim Taeyong stood close by, his face tight with worry. He held a medical scanner from his bag, his knuckles white. Daehoon's voice was low and serious. "The injection goes at the base of the spine, where your machine connects to your nervous system. The serum will spread from there. The pain will come quickly. It is the feeling of something growing, something waking up." Yuna nodded. She had felt pain before. The blinding, electric agony after Kessel 7. The dull, constant ache of muscles that forgot how to move. This was just another kind of fire. She took a deep breath. "I'm ready." She turned slightly, presenting her back. Her exoskeleton had a small access port there, where the neural interface met her skin. Daehoon worked with a surprising gentleness. There was a click, a hiss of air, and then the cold touch of the injector. "Now," he said. A sharp pinch. Then nothing for a second. Yuna thought maybe it had failed. Then it came. It was not a sharp pain. It was a deep, spreading burn. It felt like molten metal was being poured into her veins, starting from her spine and rushing outward. She gasped, her fingers digging into the edge of the table. A low sound escaped her lips. "Yuna!" Taeyong took a step forward. "Do not touch her," Daehoon said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Her body must meet the challenge. She must guide it." The burning spread down her legs that had felt nothing but pressure and cold for 5 years. Now they were on fire. But within the fire, there was sensation. Not the phantom pains she sometimes felt, but a real, raw, screaming feeling of life. It was overwhelming. Tears streamed down her face from the sheer intensity of it. Then came the pins and needles. Millions of them, sharp and electric, dancing under her skin. It was as if her legs were asleep and waking up all at once, in a terrible, violent hurry. She could feel the individual connections of her exoskeleton now, not as points of pressure, but as strange, foreign attachments. The serum was exploring them, touching the machine as well as her flesh. Her vision swam. The room tilted. She heard Taeyong's voice, distant and scared. She heard Daehoon's low rumble, saying, "Hold on. You are the pilot. Steer the ship." She clung to those words. You are the pilot. She was not a patient. She was not a victim. She was Lee Yuna, who had flown the Sirocco through an impossible fight. This was just another storm to fly through. She focused on the feeling of the ship, the joy of movement, the pull of gravity in a tight turn. She thought not of walking, but of soaring. She imagined the neural pathways not as broken wires, but as dormant flight lines, waiting for power. The pain shifted. It did not go away, but it changed. The burning became a throbbing warmth. The sharp needles became a buzz of energy, like a current. And in that buzz, a new feeling emerged. Connection. She could feel the exoskeleton. Not as a heavy shell she commanded with her mind, but as a part of her, like a second skin. She felt the servos in the knees, the power cell in the back, the fine motors in the ankles. They were not separate anymore. They were integrated into the map of her body that her brain was frantically redrawing. "Look," Taeyong whispered, his voice filled with awe. Daehoon was watching, his slitted eyes wide. The sleek metal of the exoskeleton was changing. Where it met Yuna's skin at her spine, wrists, and calves, a faint, luminous pattern was appearing. It was like delicate silver lace, a network of fine lines that glowed with a soft, blue-white light. It was the serum, forging the new pathways, creating a living circuit board between biology and machine. The pain began to recede, leaving behind a deep, total exhaustion, and a strange, humming awareness. Yuna looked down at her legs, still encased in metal. She thought, move. The left leg twitched. It was not the machine moving because her brain told it to. It was her leg moving inside the machine. The movement was small and shaky, but it was hers. A real muscle contraction, assisted and amplified by the exoskeleton. A sob choked out of her. It was a sound of pure, stunned joy. "It is working," Daehoon said. There was relief and wonder in his voice. "The bridge is forming." Yuna tried again. She thought about bending her knee. The servo in the exoskeleton whirred, but it was in perfect sync with the weak, new signal from her own nerve. The leg bent. It was clumsy, like a baby's first movement, but it was real. For an hour, they stayed in the quiet room. Yuna practiced. Small movements, a foot flexing, a knee lifting. Each one was a miracle. The glowing lines on the exoskeleton pulsed softly with her efforts. Finally, the exhaustion won. The humming awareness settled into a background feeling, like a new sense. She was sweating and trembling, but she was smiling. A real, wide smile Taeyong had not seen in years. "It is only the beginning," Daehoon cautioned. "Your body and the machine must learn each other. Strength will take time. Control will take practice. This new connection is fragile." "I know," Yuna said, her voice hoarse. "But it's a beginning." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "Thank you." Daehoon bowed his head. "The debt is paid. But remember, no one can know. You must be careful. The light on the machine will fade as the integration settles. But you must hide your progress. If anyone suspects—" "I understand," Yuna said. The danger was still there, looming outside this quiet room. But for now, it felt far away as they prepared to leave in the pre-dawn gloom. Yuna moved to stand. She didn't use the manual controls. She just thought about it, and her legs, with the machine's gentle help, pushed her upright. It was not standing. It was rising. She took a step. It was slow and heavy, but it was a step she commanded, not a step the machine allowed. Taeyong offered his arm, but she didn't take it. She took another step on her own. She was not walking yet, but she was no longer falling. She was flying very slowly, just above the ground. And for the first time in 5 long years, the sky did not seem so far away. A week passed. The world outside saw no change. Lee Yuna went to her xenobiology lab at the university. She attended meetings. She moved through the halls in her exoskeleton, its usual silent, efficient self. The faint silver lines had faded to almost nothing, just a subtle pattern under the metal that looked like a decorative finish. But inside, everything was different. In the privacy of her apartment, with the blinds closed and Kim Taeyong watching, she practiced. It started with standing. She would turn the exoskeleton's automatic supports to minimal, leaving her new, fragile connection to hold her up. The first time, her legs shook violently for a full minute before she had to grab the wall. But she stood. Each night, she stood a little longer. Then came lifting a foot, then shifting her weight. The movements were slow and required immense concentration. It was not like walking used to be. It was a new skill, a partnership between her will, her healing nerves, and the machine. The machine no longer felt like a cage, felt like a cocoon. And inside, something was waking up. Taeyong was her constant coach. "Easy. Don't force it. Think about the signal, not the muscle." He had rigged up a simple monitoring system to track the neural feedback. The readings were unlike anything in human medical files. They showed a strange, beautiful harmony between organic and synthetic signals. "It's like you're syncing with a starship engine," he said one evening, watching the screen in wonder. "But the engine is you." Yuna, sweating from effort, managed a tired smile. "It feels like that, like pre-flight checks. Every time." The joy of progress was a private light inside her. But the outside world began to press in. A message arrived from Diplomat Park Jisu's office. It was a request, polite but firm, for a meeting. They met in Jisu's tidy, modern office. Jisu smiled her perfect smile. "Yuna, thank you for coming. I wanted to check in after the gala. You left rather early." "A headache, Diplomat Park." "The lights," Yuna said smoothly. "Of course, it was a busy night." Jisu leaned forward, her hands folded on the desk. I also wanted to advise caution. I noticed you spoke with Ambassador Daehoon. At length, Yuna kept her face calm. He was interested in my research on silicon-based life. It relates to Dracon homeworld geology. I see. Jisu's smile didn't reach her eyes. The Dracon are valuable allies, but they are also proud. Their culture is very different. We must be careful not to give the wrong impression or to create expectations. What kind of expectations? Yuna asked. Jisu gestured vaguely. Well, you are a unique case, a distinguished scientist with a visible challenge. The Dracon can misinterpret kindness. They might see an opportunity for a gesture that looks good for them, but complicates things for us. It's best to keep interactions professional and brief. For the sake of interspecies harmony. The meaning was clear. Don't make us look weak by getting too close to the powerful aliens. Know your place? I understand, Yuna said, her voice neutral. Good. Jisu's smile warmed a degree. We just want to protect you, Yuna, and our relationship with the Concordance. Yuna left the office feeling a cold anger. They wanted to protect their image. They wanted her to be a quiet, inspiring story in the background, not a person who might change the story. The danger became real 2 days later. Taeyong came to her apartment, his face grim. He brought up a news site on her screen. The headline was small but vicious. A scandalous night with the Dragon Ambassador? The article was by a journalist named Choi Miho. It didn't have facts, but it was full of poisonous suggestions. It mentioned the long, intimate balcony conversation and the unusual attention the ambassador paid to a certain disabled human scientist. It asked questions about what deals are made in the dark and whether human dignity is being traded for alien favor. The word pity was used twice. They're painting you as a pawn, Taeyong said, furious. Or worse. Yuna felt sick. This was the consequence Daehoon had warned about. The world did not see honor or healing. It saw scandal. Her personal comm buzzed. It was an official summons. Not from Jisu this time, but from the Office of Interspecies Affairs. A formal inquiry. The same day, she received a secure, encrypted message. It was from Daehoon. Only 3 words. They have called me. The storm had arrived. The inquiry was held in a sterile conference room. Yuna sat on one side. 2 senior human officials sat across from her. They were polite but cold. Dr. Lee, we must ask about your contact with Ambassador Kong Daehoon after the gala. We spoke on the balcony about his interest in xenobiology, Yuna repeated. It was a scientific discussion. Our Dracon counterparts indicate the ambassador has been unusually insistent on matters of medical collaboration recently. A sudden interest in human neural repair. You can see how this looks, given your condition and your meeting. I cannot speak for the ambassador's interests, Yuna said. Are you aware of any offers made? Any exchanges proposed? The official's eyes were sharp. Yuna's heart pounded, but her face was a mask of calm. None. He was a polite and knowledgeable conversation partner. They asked the same questions in different ways for an hour. They were circling the truth, but they had no proof. They only had suspicion and the ugly news article as she was finally allowed to leave. One of the officials said, Dr. Lee, you are a symbol of human resilience. It is important that symbol remains clear, uncomplicated. We trust you will make choices that reflect well on all of us. The threat was clear. Be quiet. Stay in your lane. Or else. That evening, the final message came. It was a command. A joint press conference was being arranged for the next morning. Diplomat Park Jisu and Ambassador Kong Daehoon would make a brief, joint statement to clarify the nature of their positive diplomatic relationship and put baseless rumors to rest. Yuna's presence was not required. She knew what that meant. Daehoon would be forced to stand beside Jisu and deny any special interest. He would have to call the rumors lies. He would have to publicly distance himself from her to protect his people and the peace. Her chance to thank him, to finish her healing in secret, would be buried under a mountain of diplomatic lies. Taeyong looked at her, despair on his face. It's over. They're going to shut it all down. Yuna sat in her apartment, feeling the new, humming connection to her machine. She felt the strength slowly growing in her legs. She thought of Jisu's careful words, the officials' cold threats, the journalists' ugly insinuations. They wanted the silent, broken symbol, but the dragon's heart was beating again, strong and steady, and it was tired of silence. She looked at Taeyong, a new fire in her eyes. "No," she said, her voice quiet but final. "It's not over. They want a statement tomorrow?" He nodded. "Good," said Lee Yuna. "I'll give them one they won't forget." The press conference was set for 10 a.m. at the Interspecies Diplomatic Hall. By 9:30, the media gallery was full. Reporters whispered. Cameras were tested. The air buzzed with low talk about scandal and politics. On the stage, 2 chairs and 2 microphones waited. The human and Dracon flags hung side by side. Backstage, the mood was tense. Diplomat Park Jisu checked her notes, her face smooth and prepared. This was damage control. A simple, strong denial. A show of unity. Ambassador Kang Dae-hoon stood nearby, still and silent as a mountain. His expression was unreadable, but his golden eyes burned. He was being forced to lie, to dishonor a debt, for the sake of peace. It was a bitter pill. "Remember, Ambassador," Jisu said softly, "we express mutual respect, deny the rumors as harmful fiction, and reaffirm our focus on trade agreements." Simple. Dae-hoon gave a slow, shallow nod. It was not agreement. It was acknowledgement that I in a small side room. Kim Taeyong was in a state of pure panic. He gripped Yuna's shoulders. "You don't have to do this. They'll destroy you. They'll take everything." Lee Yuna was dressed not in her usual lab clothes, but in a simple, dark suit. Her exoskeleton was polished clean. She looked calm, but there was a fierce light in her eyes. The light Taeyong remembered from the pilot's chair. "They already took everything, Taeyong," she said, her voice steady. "5 years ago. Now they just want me to be quiet about it." She placed a hand over his. "You have been my wingman since the beginning. Be my wingman now. Get to the front of the crowd. I need a friendly face to look at." He swallowed hard, his eyes wet. He nodded. He knew he couldn't stop her. The dragon was awake. At 10 a.m. exactly. Jisu and Dae-hoon walked onto the stage. The camera lights flared. Jisu gave a practiced, gentle smile. Dae-hoon stood beside her, his face a solemn mask. Jisu began to speak. "Thank you all for coming. We are here today to address the recent, unfortunate speculation in the media. The relationship between humanity and the Dracon Concordance is built on a foundation of deep mutual respect and shared goals." Yuna stood in the shadow of the side entrance, listening. She heard the empty, careful words. She heard the lie being built, sentence by sentence. She closed her eyes and felt the hum of her connection to the machine. She felt the new, fragile pathways in her legs. They were not strong, but they were hers. Jisu was nearing the key denial. And so, the idea that Ambassador Dae-hoon would engage in any inappropriate or secretive dealings is not only false, but harmful to the spirit of our now. Yuna stepped out of the shadows and into the bright light of the stage. A murmur went through the crowd. Cameras swung away from Jisu. There were confused whispers. Jisu's speech faltered, her smile freezing. Dae-hoon's head turned. His eyes widened, just a fraction. Yuna walked to the third, empty space between the 2 microphones. She did not use the exoskeleton's manual controls. She walked with a slow, deliberate, slightly stiff gait. Each step was a conscious effort, a visible act of will. The quiet whir of the servos was the only sound in the sudden quiet. She reached the center and turned to face the crowd. She saw Taeyong in the front, his face pale but nodding. She saw Choi Miho, the journalist, leaning forward with hungry eyes. She saw Jisu's look of pure, icy shock. Yuna leaned toward the human microphone. Her voice, when it came, was clear and carried across the silent hall. "Diplomat Jisu is talking about rumors," Yuna said. "But she is not talking about truth. And the truth is more important than anyone's comfort." Jisu found her voice. Dr. Lee, this is not the time or place. Please, let us handle this. Yuna ignored her. She looked directly at the cameras. 5 years ago, there was a battle at Kessel 7.
A pirate fleet attaquent civilian transport.
One training ship, the Sirocco, stayed behind to hold them off. The pilot of that ship flew until the ship broke apart. That pilot saved 147 lives. The crowd was utterly still. This was an old story, a hero story. Why was she telling it now? The pilot was injured. The neural damage was total. The pilot was told they would never walk again. The pilot was given a medal, a pension, and a machine. Yuna placed her hands on the arms of her exoskeleton. And then the pilot was told to disappear, to be a quiet, inspiring story, to not make a fuss. She paused, letting the words sink in. That pilot is me. A wave of gasps rippled through the room. Jisoo looked like she'd been struck. Daehoon stood perfectly still, watching Yuna with intense pride. Yuna continued, her voice growing stronger. At the gala, Ambassador Daehoon recognized the pilot in me. Not because of my body, but because of the flight I flew. He saw the dragon's heart, as his people would say, and he offered me something no human could. Not pity, not politics, honor. She turned her head to look at Daehoon. He gave her a slow, deep nod of respect. He saw a warrior in a cage, Yuna said, turning back to the cameras. And he offered me a key, a dangerous, forbidden key, because that is what honor does. It acts. Choi Miho shouted a question. Are you saying he gave you illegal alien technology? Yuna looked at him. I am saying he saw my fire when everyone else saw only ashes. She looked down at her legs, then back up. You all look at this machine and see a limit. You see a disabled woman. You see a symbol of what was lost. She took a deep breath. But you are wrong. She closed her eyes for a second, focusing all her will. She thought not of walking, but of flying, of the feeling of the Sirocco rolling through space. She fed that feeling into the new, glowing pathways. The exoskeleton responded. It wasn't a simple step. She moved with a sudden, shocking fluidity. She took 3 quick, light steps across the stage, turned, and came back to the center. The movements were not perfectly human. They were something else. Faster, smoother, with a powerful, mechanical grace. The software was a song of fusion. Then, she did something else. She bent her knees, lowered her body, and pushed. The exoskeleton's power cells hummed, amplifying her own weak muscles. She jumped. It was only a few inches off the ground, but for a woman who could not move her legs a week before, it was a miracle. She landed with a soft, solid click. The hall erupted, not in cheers, but in a roar of shock, confusion, and awe. Yuna stood in the center of the storm, breathing hard. She looked at Jisoo's stunned face, at the flashing cameras, at the sea of open mouths. You ask if I remember? Yuna said into the microphone, her voice ringing out. I remember the sky. The question now is, do you remember us? Do you remember that humanity is not defined by what breaks us, but by what we build from the pieces? She turned and walked off the stage, not with the slow, careful steps of a patient, but with the steady, deliberate stride of a pilot leaving her ship after a perfect landing. The scandal was dead. In its place, a legend had just been reborn. The silence in the hall lasted only a second after Lee Yuna left the stage. Then it shattered into a chaos of shouting voices and flashing lights. Diplomat Park Jisoo stood frozen at her microphone, her prepared speech a useless paper in her hand. Her mind raced, trying to find a way to control this, to spin it, but there was no spin for what they had just seen. It was too raw, too real. Ambassador Kang Daehoon looked at the spot where Yuna had stood. A deep, rumbling sound came from his chest. It was not a growl. It was approval. He turned to Jisoo, his golden eyes sharp. The truth has wings, he said, his voice carrying even without the microphone. You cannot cage it. Then he turned and walked off the stage, leaving the human officials to handle the storm alone. The news exploded faster than a supernova. The videos were everywhere. Not just Yuna's words, but her movements. The smooth, powerful steps. The impossible jump. The networks replayed it in slow motion, analyzing the fusion of human will and machine. The headline shifted from Scandalous Night to Miracle in Neo Soul and The Dragon Woman's Flight. In her apartment, Yuna was shaking. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving her exhausted and vulnerable. Kim Taeyong was with her, watching the news on multiple screens, his face a mix of terror and triumph. They're calling for statements from the military, from the government, from the Dragon Concordance, he said. Jisu's office has gone silent. They don't know what to say. The official response, when it came hours later, was cautious and confused. It confirmed Yuna's identity as the pilot of Kessel 7, a fact they had once buried. It praised her continued service and amazing resilience. It said they were reviewing the nature of the advanced assistive technology with their Dragon allies. The words were stiff, trying to look in control of a situation that had flown far beyond their control. The public did not share their caution. Messages poured in, from veterans who saluted her, from people with disabilities who saw not a pity story, but a future, from ordinary humans who felt a fierce, proud thrill. The phrase "Dragon's Heart" started trending. But there was also danger. A formal inquiry was announced, not about scandal, but about unsanctioned biotechnological integration and violations of interstellar medical exchange laws. The threat was still there, just wearing a different mask. 2 days after the press conference, a secure package arrived at Yuna's door. Contained no note, only a single data chip. When she played it, it was a recorded message from Ambassador Daehoon. He was in his quarters on the Dragon ship. Dr. Lee, his image said, "By the time you see this, my ship will be departing. My presence here has become politically difficult for my superiors. But my departure is not a retreat. You have started a fire that will not be easily put out." He leaned closer to the recorder. "My people have seen the recordings. Many are angry, some at me for breaking our laws, but many more are in awe. They see a human who understands honor in a way they thought only Dragon could. They see a warrior who remade herself. This changes things. It will force conversations we have avoided for centuries. You have done a brave thing. Do not let them clip your wings again. The sky remembers you." The message ended. Yuna felt a pang of loss, but also a surge of strength. She was not alone. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The official inquiry was a tense affair. Yuna, now with a human lawyer provided by a veterans group, stood her ground. She did not reveal the source of the serum. She spoke only of the result. She spoke of her right to heal, to seek a better life. She asked them if they would have denied a wounded soldier a new limb. They had no good answer. The public pressure was too great. The inquiry ended with a vague statement about new frameworks for post-combat care and interspecies medical research partnerships. It was a quiet, bureaucratic surrender. They could not punish the hero without looking like monsters. Yuna returned to her lab, but nothing was the same. She was no longer just Dr. Lee. She was a symbol, but now it was a symbol she controlled. She began to work openly with engineers, including Taeyong, to study her own integration. To improve the design, to help others. One evening, she stood on her balcony, the same view as before. She was not holding the railing for support. She was just standing. The exoskeleton was still there, but it was different now. It was not a cage or even a cocoon. It was her wings, a part of her she had earned. Taeyong joined her, handing her a cup of tea. "What now?" he asked. She looked up at the stars, no longer hidden by city glow in her mind. "Now," she said, "we see how far I can fly." She thought of the official who had told her to stay in the back. She thought of the journalist who had tried to create a scandal. She thought of Kang Dae-hoon, who saw her true shape when she was broken. Humanity was not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest species in the galaxy. But as she stood there, feeling the hum of a new kind of life in her veins, she knew what their strength was. It was the will to look at a broken thing and not see an end, but a new beginning. It was the courage to take a forbidden spark and use it to light a fire that could be seen across the stars. She was Lee Yuna, the disabled dragon woman, and she was just getting started.